Hello and a warm welcome to a brand new episode of South Central on ET Now. You're watching the one show that keeps you updated on everything making news in South India, from business, markets, the startup ecosystem, politics, policy and beyond. We've got them all covered right here on South Central. My name is Jude Sanith and these are the headlines we're tracking at this hour. You heard it first on South Central. IIT Madras Incubation Cell crosses the milestone of 500 startups incubated and over $2 billion in VC and angel funding. The incubator's CEO tells ET Now its medium-term target is a startup IPO every month. Bengaluru's Graha Space will launch its maiden nanosatellite mission from Brazil as Solaris S2 receives approval from the Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. Lokayukta officials in Karnataka conduct raids across 10 locations in 8 districts in connection to suspicions over disproportionate assets as government officials in Mandya, Bidar and Mysuru, among other districts, find themselves again under the Lokayukta lens. In Telangana, unpaid liquor dues have led to a payments crisis, says industry body, as manufacturing units and supply chain ecosystems begin feeling the heat of non-payments. First up, you're hearing it first right here on South Central. 12 years after it was established, the IIT Madras Incubation Cell has crossed the milestone of 500 startups under its fold. In an exclusive chat with ET Now earlier today, the incubator's CEO, that's Tamaswati Ghosh, told me that the next target for the organization is to see one IPO per month from startups that it has incubated. Tamaswati also told me that the priority for IIT Madras' startups will remain on revenue generation and not unicorn valuations. In my chat with the incubation cell boss, she also said which sectors the incubator was placing bets on and why startups must focus a whole lot more on its people. Here's a slice from their exclusive conversation.
When we started our journey 12 years back, it was never about the numbers. And today, when you talk about the 500 milestone and the various valuations and the impacts that our startups are making, we are extremely proud of what we've been able to do as an ecosystem. I would like to emphasize it is an ecosystem that has managed to produce this. This is not a result of any one organization. Of course, IIT Madras Incubation Cell has led the way, has sort of, driven this whole ecosystem of DeepTech startups, but we have a lot of people to thank for it. So, like you rightly said, today 500 plus, in fact 510 startups as on today that has been incubated. What we are very proud of is the successes that we are seeing by our startups given the kind of sectors that they work in. Right? We are very used to, in India, hearing about the great impacts and success stories in terms of valuation, in terms of size of companies in certain sectors, particularly the retail, e-commerce sectors, and hear very little about the deep tech, and truly deep tech in the sense, these are startups that have been founded on core engineering and science-based innovations, and also founded by individuals who are doing this for the first time. These are first-time entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs in areas which are extremely, extremely difficult to create commercial ventures in the context of, say, what things were like 5-6 years back, right, in India. So we are very proud of the 511 numbers, which means that deep tech is still something which is, youngsters are still going for that. Second, the success, commercial success of our startups. that 500 plus startups today have a combined valuation of over 6 billion US dollars. And that is just reflective of a small section of companies that have gone on to raise investments. Right? So valuations are purely based on the investments. We have not even looked at startups that have yet to raise VC capital or have been evaluated, but they are in the market generating revenue.
Absolutely.
So when you talk about companies in manufacturing, robotics, space, defense, medtech innovations, you have companies in agri-tech. Now imagine these kind of energy, renewables, they go on to have that kind of a valuation and that kind of commercial impact. It's a wonderful story. I think wonderful story for the country that this is the capability, provided you give an environment that an IIT Madras, along with our network of industry, investors, the alumni community coming together, and they've been able to give.
No doubt.
So we are very proud of that
Absolutely.
journey.
And even as we speak and reflect on that milestone of 500 startups, you've also upped the pace of this incubation itself. I think 500 startups per year, more so in the deep tech space. So I have to ask you, Dr. Ghosh, looking forward, if you were to look into the pipeline that you have right now before you, what is the pace at which you would like this incubation to continue at? Are you looking at short-term, medium-term targets of 100 startups incubated per month? Which sectors are you looking at for this incubation to happen in? What's that pipeline looking like going forward?
Pipeline has always been quite strong here. We've not really gone out there to market ourselves. The pipeline has been also very organic, right? And we are also very proud of the fact that while we have a fairly good pipeline or strong pipeline that comes out of the university that we are anchored, right, which is IIT Madras, more than 60% of our startups, of the 500 actually, come from all over India, right? So we have startups coming from an IIT Madras as well as startups from all over the country, from far east to north to west, everywhere, right? So of course, in the last couple of years, a larger number of companies have started coming in, and that's purely because of the success of the ecosystem that we've been hearing, right? So when we get our first unicorn, the news goes around, right? When we have our first IPO, Ether IPO that happened, more and more companies that are working in that space, right? When you hear about an Agnikul and their story of launching their first, 3D printed, rocket, these stories go out, and there is a lot more confidence then among youngsters who are looking to do something in these sectors, saying that this is the best place for me.
Absolutely.
So, like I said, pipeline has been driven by the success stories of our existing startups. Of course, last year we incubated over 100 new companies. Of course, the ones who are already incubated continue to be part of the ecosystem. So it is an ecosystem of 500 plus. This year, we are hoping to keep that trend. Looking at the number of applications we are getting every month.
Another 100 startups per year, you reckon?
I think that will be the common trend, if not larger, because surely purely the kind of numbers that we are getting in terms of applications itself, that is growing. We evaluate close to about 150 startup applications every month. So while we are very conscious of the fact that quality should not be compromised, secondly, that we need to be very clear the startups that join us, we are able to add value. It's not about the numbers. It was never about the numbers.
Absolutely.
We should be able to add value, accelerate these startups so that we have more of the unicorns, more of the IPOs, more revenue making, revenue generating, and of course impact for our country.
No doubt. So even as you continue to keep this pace and also focus on value, which is of course very important ingredient, I would assume, insofar as the work that you do, are there any specific sectors that perhaps interest you a bit more than the others? The IIT Madras director on multiple occasions, Professor Kamakoti, has said that deep tech is in fact a very key focus area as far as the institute and its work in startups is concerned. Do you share that opinion? Do you feel that there are sectors beyond deep tech that the incubator could possibly look at? Where do you see the most promise lying sector-wise?
Deep tech has always been our strength because we are, after all, incubator connected or associated with an academic institute, right? So our expertise lies in the technology and the innovations, and that's the first thing we are able to support our startups with, right? So early on, we saw the trend, these sectors that became very promising in terms of growth, in terms of new companies coming in, as well as they are able to go out there and commercialize those products, were sectors that IIT Madras was very good at, right? So manufacturing was an area that really exploded.
Right.
And also because of the setting of Chennai, Tamil Nadu, it is a manufacturing hub after all. So those sectors, of course, grew, and they continue to be one of the strongest areas, manufacturing being one. Space and aerospace, defense, these are also areas that are growing very strongly. Again, it's all because of the sort of the ecosystems that have been created in these sectors, right? A young entrepreneur that comes to us, if they need any tech support, right? If they are innovating, they may not have the means to go all the way. You have the backing of an IIT Madras kind of an institution with their labs, with their faculty, with their state-of-the-art infrastructure that is there. Then you have the industry connects that we have, right? Absolutely. Government connects that we have. That brings in the first POC for our startups, the validations that happen. And then, of course, over the years, the investor partners that we have created, the community that we have created, obviously these are investors that have already invested in companies in these spaces, right? So it becomes much easier for young companies that are entering into that space, right, in that sector, to have these kind of support systems.
No doubt.
So very quickly, manufacturing remains strong, robotics is booming, space and aerospace, defense is very, very strong here. Medtech is very, medical devices. So health tech is also a very, very prominent area here. Energy, e-mobility. You would have heard of some of the companies, Ather leading the way. That's a very strong area. And one of the areas that is exploding right now, and not just in IIT Madras, but I think all over the world, is AI. Anything to do with AI. But we are being very, very selective there because we should be able to add value to those companies so that they scale.
Right.
It should not be just because you have the AI tagged with you and so you come along. So these are areas that are growing. Quantum is another area. FinTech growing with AI. So I guess AI in X, as they call it. AI in manufacturing to AI in defense or AI in FinTech, all of these things are growing right now.
No doubt. And like you rightly mentioned, companies like Ather, Unifor, many others have really led the way insofar as, that brand of the IIT Madras Incubation Cell and its reputation preceding itself. Another very interesting part of the kind of startups that you've incubated are, like you said, valuations close to $6 billion, but also the funding that you've helped raise via the angel and the VC route, I think totaling to about $2 billion, so to speak, which has been an integral part of getting a number of your startups up and running as far as the ecosystem goes. Looking forward, and as you have 150 applications a month, you hope to grow at the pace of incubating 100 startups that you continue to be at. On the funding front, what is your outlook really? And I ask this question largely because funding has remained in the spotlight over the last 3 years, especially given the ebbs and flows of the funding ecosystem, including a bit of a trench, between 2021 and 2023, which saw perhaps the worst phase that Indian startups have seen insofar as funding is concerned. Going forward, $2 billion done and dusted. Where does the future funding pipeline lie insofar as the incubation cell is concerned?
So funding, as is with all startups, particularly the kind of companies that we have here, the deep tech nature itself, it's a very capital-intensive journey for many. If you talk about companies in the space tech or even in the automotive sector to robotics and all that. So access to capital and fast enough is very important. And I just wanted to mention, if you look at how the journey was like for some of the really successful companies that you also mentioned about, Ather and the Agnikul's and all that, it was a very, very, very tough journey 5-6 years back, right? The appetite of our VCs in terms of putting a bet on these kind of not your usual retail companies, right? E-commerce was not so much, right? Things have changed a lot, and that's a lot to do with many of our HNIs many of our successful entrepreneurs who've built big companies who've come back and said, we want to support these young entrepreneurs and these out-of-the-box, very creative, innovative companies, right? And last couple of years, particularly Incubation Cell, we have focused on bringing those kind of investors into our ecosystem. Early interaction between startups, founders and the investors is something that we focus on very strongly. Because it's also important for our young founders or entrepreneurs who are so good with their technology but not so good in communicating, or reaching out to the right people. It's very important for them to kind of interact and get those feedbacks and get themselves ready for investment. Secondly, strategic investments are very important in the kind of sectors that our startups work in. So bringing in the right VCs is equally important as bringing in industry that are able to invest in our startups. So if you look at the journey of Aether itself, Hero made a huge difference versus the various VCs that came along, right? Similarly, for some of our other companies, from a MediBuddy to Unifor, there were certain investors, even though they gave that capital, but they did a lot more for the companies in terms of opening up markets for them. So it's very important for us as a deep tech ecosystem to bring these kind of investors. And the other thing that's very important is how patient is that capital. So a journey of Agnikul or a journey of Aether, imagine if these VCs were within a 2 or 3 years of investment said, where is my 10x? If not, buy back my shares. They couldn't have done what they have done if they had these kind of investors. So we are focusing a lot in bringing right kind of investors in our ecosystem and early interactions and patient capital. And there are we are not just dependent, as I said, on the VCs, industry, venture arms as well. And debt financing is also very important.
No doubt. No, patient capital, like you rightly said, Dr. Ghosh, has been no doubt a very important part of getting startup ecosystem up and running. But do you sometimes wake up in the morning and say, all right, we've raised 2 billion in funding this year, this is what we're going to hit. These many 100 millions is what I would like to help these startups get by way of VC, angel, of course, funding by way of other industry peers as well. Is there a number in mind in terms of wanting to continue this funding journey that you've drawn up for yourself over the last decade or so?
So, while it's very nice to talk about valuations and investments, when we give that figure of $6 billion as the combined valuation and the kind of expression we get from all kind of people, it's always nice to. It's an easier way to say how successful the ecosystem is, but here the focus has always been on revenue generation. Because honestly speaking, the true commercial success of any startup is their ability to generate revenue. And that's the way they scale as well, and that's the way they bring in investment as also. So while we are conscious of the fact that capital infusion is very, very important, and we keep making sure every startup that are looking to raise investment need that capital, they have access to the sources, right? Whether it's VCs or debt financing or government, our goals have always been on the revenue generation and continues to be that.
So what are those goals like?
Well, today, in fact, we had our board meeting of Incubation Cell, and our director of IIT Madras is also our chairman. So he mentioned that, of course, he was very happy about our pipeline and incubations that were going on, and he asked, so this year too, we should be able to continue our startup 100, kind of trend, and we said yes. So our next goal that he said is, our next goal should be how many IPOs that we should be able to do every year, right? An IPO is directly connected to your ability to generate revenue and what has been the market, scale of that company, right? So our target now is one IPO per month in 5-6 years down the line, right? So it's all about revenue generation. So now the focus in Incubation Cell as well as the wider IIT Madras is get POCs for our startups, work with as much industry as possible, open markets not just in India, but work with partners so that startups get access to international markets early on. Considering the kind of companies that are the AI companies, they can go into parallel markets at the same time, for example. So focus is on that. early revenue generations, can we hit the 1,000 crore revenue generation mark for our companies? We should have more and more companies that are breaching the 100 crore annual turnover, and maybe a few which is 1,000 crore, and stop talking about the unicorns and the valuations.
You know, I was going to ask you how many more unicorns you expect to come out of the campus, but I think I got my answer right there. Not so much unicorns, but let's talk about revenue generation and potential for it. And an admirable outlook, no doubt, in the way you want to go about incubating startups going into the future. But I have to ask you, before we end itself, I know you can't divulge names, and I'm sure there's a whole lot on your radar in terms of startups to incubate. So perhaps without naming names, where do you have your radar set right now? Are there companies that are already catching your fancy in terms of the work they're doing, in terms of interesting, path-breaking ideas that they're coming to the table with? What's that radar looking like at the moment, Dr. Ghosh?
So we are quite excited about some of our existing portfolio companies where we think IPO is in the horizon. So that remains a focus, and anything to speed up that journey. The ecosystem is quite ready to do that. Work that's happening in the semiconductor space, work that's happening in space, work that is happening in the fintech as well. There is a high potential for these startups 2 to 3 years down the line. We would see another few IPOs in the making, and I think that's one of the reasons why director is kind of pushing us towards that. There are certainly companies now which are in the areas of robotics, a few in the defense, and a couple of our quantum companies, where we see them making an impact internationally very soon. We are talking about them entering into markets in Middle East, in Europe, and in the US as well. We also have companies who have done very well in the US market, returning back to India. So we are very excited about that kind of a storyline, where a few years back, we used to hear more and more of our companies moving out of India. We have such stories, right? And of course, the younger ones, let's see how we are here to support them. A lot of very challenging areas, quantum being one such. We don't know what is the market looking like, but we are here to help startups who are willing to do the impossible. And the ecosystem is ready to support them. We've been doing that for the last 12 years, and we look forward to another decade of, great innovations and risk takers, and we are here to support our founders all the way.
Lots to look forward to then, especially as you look ahead. I have to ask you this before I end. If there's one learning that you look back on and reflect on at your tenure and over the course of the existence of the incubator itself, in the work that you've done with startups, what would that one learning be, and why does it resonate so much with you?
Oh dear, there have been lots of learnings actually. To highlight just one, I think on top of my head, incubation is not about finding the right companies, finding the right innovation or the right business model. For us, and for me particularly, this whole startup ecosystem has always been about the people. It's the ones who made it big was a result of the founders and the team they were able to create. I don't think it had much to do with the tech or the products. Of course, eventually it does, right? But the crux of it, the foundation of these startups, has everything to do with the founders and the team. And that's been a great learning for me. And their resilience, their ability to get through the toughest of times, and COVID was one such, right? And my incubator here grew along with them.
Absolutely.
I've grown along with them,
As you have, and I'm sure great people build great companies, and no doubt that is truly a solid learning there for you. On that note, thank you so much for doing this. Congratulations again on over 500 startups, and long may that journey continue. Thank you. Well, lots to look forward there as far as the IIT Madras Incubation Cell is concerned, even as it has notched up that landmark of 500 startups incubated. Well, on that note, we're completely out of time on this episode of South Central. Thanks so much for watching. But do stay tuned to ED Now to keep getting the lowdown on business, markets, and a whole lot more. I'll be back tomorrow with more news and updates from the region. For the moment, it's goodbye from us.